I just share the window. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you remember, in the last class, we discussed about the steps that we need to take to analyze a problem using flexibility matrix method. And at the end, we have solved the problem uh, in which we have taken a truss system, that means a structure with axially loaded members, and we have analyzed that member. Just a minute, lot of people are entering. Let me enter to some other computer so that it becomes easier for me to work with that particular part. Just a minute. Yes. Now the issue is we have discussed a problem with axially loaded system, a truss system. Today we are going to discuss, if time permits, two different systems. One, rather both the systems we will be solving are transversely loaded systems. One of them is a simple beam, and the other one is a frame structure. So if we solve these three kinds of problem, one with axially loaded system, two being transversely loaded system, one is a simple beam, the other one is a frame structure, and all the structures in consideration are having static indeterminacy of certain orders. So if we can follow the problem very carefully, it will be easier for us to tackle any problem in this particular domain using flexibility matrix method. So first we will take a problem. As you see, we are considering a beam ABC, which is fixed at uh, one end A, and having roller supports at B and C. And on the section AB, you have got a uniformly distributed load W per meter length, which is given as 5 kilonewton per meter, as you see in the right hand side. There it is given 5 kilonewton per meter. And in the section BC, you have got a load P, which is centrally located, and the magnitude of P is W into L, where L is the length of the sections AB and AC, AB and BC each having section length L. Very interestingly, you note that the AB section is having the modulus of rigidity as 2EI and BC as EI. So with this flexibility coefficient matrix method, you can analyze a continuous beam with varying value of rigidity modulus along the length of the beam. So this is very important. So what we have understood from our last discussion, that the primarily we have to uh, discretize the structure into certain number of elements. So in this particular problem, the elements we are identifying are AB is one element, let AB be the first element and BC be the second element. So this is how we are trying to identify the structure. AB and BC are two elements. So there can be number of elements if you go on increasing the span of the B. So it is very much understandable. We are not going into very big problems. Just to have the concept clear, we are dealing with a two-way system actually. Now, from the figure, it is very clear that the total number of redundancies are 2 in number, because there are 5 degrees of freedom, of which 2 are redundant, and we are identifying the point B and point C as the 2 redundant forces. So reaction at B and reaction at C we are considering as redundant forces. And then from our basic concept of primary structure and secondary structure, you know it very well. Once we remove the redundancy, we will first analyze the structure for the given external load, that is the UDL as well as the point load, and find the displacements at B and C, and then that is the primary structural analysis. And in the secondary structural analysis, we will remove the external load, and instead we will impose these reaction forces at B and C, and then analyze the structure to obtain the displacements at B and C, and then we will solve our what you call the compatibility equation and find all the unknowns. This is the general understanding that we have done while studying this flexibility method, flexibility matrix method. So this is what we are going to do. The most important thing, which is a little different than what we have done in our truss structure, which is axially loaded structure. Now these beams are all transversely loaded system, which are capable of carrying moments, and the load that is applied on a beam need not necessarily act at the nodes. It will act along the length of the element. So what we need to do is we have to distribute the load in the element in terms of nodal forces. So this is what we have discussed in the last class also. The general concept we have given in the last class. So this is what we are doing right here itself. Now what we do is that we first take the section AB, that is the first element, and this A is a fixed end, so we are not bothered about what is the amount of load coming. So this W per meter, that is 5 kilonewton per meter, will have some kind of a point load at B, and its moment at point B has to be calculated based on fixed condition. This is what we have told in the beginning also, that how we distribute the load, what are the steps to deal with transversely loaded system. Exactly that is done. Now for W part, that is the UDL part, we have got a component, vertical component, transverse component acting at B, and also for this point load P, which is part of BC. So this P also will have some component at B. So obviously at point B, there will be some part of W per meter as well as some part of P. Now you see the axis system we are assuming. This is a very important thing that you have to do while solving the problem. Right in the beginning, you have to define your axis system. Here we are using a right-hand screw rule system, where X we have taken as along the length of the beam, Y is taken vertically upwards, and your all rotational direction, that is slope and the moment, is taken anti-clockwise as positive. So this particular sign convention you have to write it or draw it right when you start your problem, because otherwise things will become very complicated. You will understand as we go along the development of the problem, you will understand why this sign convention plays a very important role. Now this is done. So that means now for point B and point C, point B has got 2 degrees of freedom because we are dealing with beam. So point B will have 2 degrees of freedom and C will have 2 degrees of freedom. What are those degrees of freedom? Point B has the capability to have a transverse displacement, that is the first degree of freedom, and point B will have the capability of rotation, that is the slope at point B, that is the second degree of freedom. Similarly, at point C, you have got a transverse degree of freedom as well as a rotational degree of freedom. So for a normal horizontal beam, each point which defines the element boundary, which is called a node, has got 2 degrees of freedom for a planar beam structure. We are considering a one-dimensional beam structure, so it has got 2 degrees of freedom per node. So we have got 4 degrees of freedom in this present problem. You make more number of elements, you get more degrees of freedom. That is a different issue altogether. You can always extrapolate the degrees of freedom with respect to the number of nodes, because each node will have 2 degrees of freedom, and that is quite obvious. Transverse deflection as well as the slope. Now, naturally, your loading, the load that is being applied, will also have 4 degrees of freedom. So those 4 degrees of freedom for point B, say for point B, the component from the UDL is WL by 2, and the component from P is P by 2. So these combined together, because both of them directed downwards, so will be preceded by a minus sign. So this is quite obvious. That is the degree of, that is the force along the first degree of freedom. Now for the second one, you see it here, you can see it here, I have drawn it, the primary structure. For the second point, that is for the slope, you see your moment due to the UDL is directed in the anti-clockwise direction at the right end. So it will have a positive sense, and the moment developed due to the point load at point B is in the clockwise direction. So it will have a negative sense when we consider this particular sign convention. So WL square by 12 will have a positive sign, and PL by 8 will have a negative sign. So the total amount of moment developed at point 2 is point B, that is in the second degree of freedom, is WL square by 12 minus PL by 8. Similarly, at point C, you have got again 2 degrees of freedom, and at point C, you have got only contribution from P. So it will be having minus P by 2, and at this particular point, the rotation is in the anti-clockwise direction for point P. So it is PL by 8. Up to this point, is it clear to you all? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Now next we will go to the next slide. So the step 1 is complete. We have already identified the loads acting at the points along the degrees of freedom with proper signage. This is very important, with proper signage for the primary structure. The next thing is that member flexibility matrix. Now we have already seen in the earlier slide that your member rigidity is 2EI and EI respectively for AB and AC. Obviously, while calculating the flexibility matrix, this rigidity has to be taken care of. So obviously, for the first element, that is F1, the flexibility matrix is given by F1, and you know L cube by 3EI is the general formula. L cube by 3I, L square by 2EI, and L by 2EI. These parameters are already known to you from your earlier understanding. So now it is this EI is 2EI, so it will become 6EI in the denominator. So L cube by 6EI, L square by 4EI, and all those numbers come. Okay, this is F1. Similarly, for F2, you have got EI as your rigidity. So L cube by 3EI, L square by 2EI, L square by 2EI, and L by EI. And now the overall matrix, overall flexibility matrix, we have already defined that the overall flexibility matrix will form a block diagonal. So for truss system, we have got only single flexibility value per truss member, but for a beam member, you have got a square matrix, as flexibility matrix per member, per element. So obviously, when you model your overall flexibility matrix, it will form a block diagonal. Block diagonal means this F1 will be a block diagonal size 2 by 2. F2 is a block diagonal size 2 by 2 because we are dealing with 2 degrees of freedom per node, and the rest of the off diagonal terms will be filled with padded by 0. So this is how it happens. So the step 2 is also complete. Now coming to step 3. Step 3, in step 3 we are going to calculate our PML and PSL. And what are these PML and PSL? This is what we have learned, that basically the PML is the member load effect due to unit load applied at the actually applied load direction. That means L, the subscript L, represents the actual load and M are the member forces. So basically what we do, we will apply the load, the external load in the direction, rather along the degrees of freedom in which the external load is applied, and then we will try to calculate the member forces developed due to the unit load at the boundaries, that is at the nodes. Now it will be very clear, and similarly PSL is the same thing. That is what happens at the support. What happens at the support? That is what is the support reaction due to those unit loads applied. It will become very clear. Now we have seen in our earlier slide that we have got 4 forces along 4 degrees of freedom. So obviously your L, that means PML, that is the subscript L, has got 4 values. First one is the transverse load at B, second one is the moment at B, third one is the transverse load at C, and the fourth one is at the moment at C. So there are 4 components of external load. So what we do for case 1, you see this case 1 here, we apply a unit load at point B in the transverse load direction. Now this W1 is the value actually. W1 is the symbol used to define the first load case. It is taken as 1 unity. Now if I apply a unit load at point B, that means all the other forces, that means there won't be any force developed at C, there won't be any moment developed at B itself. The only force that will get developed is the transverse force at point B and the corresponding support reactions as shown here. Okay, so with proper sign you can have the idea, because this sign follows the same sign that you have assumed right in the beginning. So mind it, it is very customary, or it is very easy if you use your applied unit load in the direction of the positive load sense, positive axis sense, because you see, although the actual load is directed downwards, we have used this unit load directed upwards, because that will make things little easier while calculating PML and PSL. So you follow the same signage in all the load calculations. This is case 1. In case 2, you are applying only a moment, unit moment at point B in the positive sense actually. Similarly, for case 3, you are using a unit load W3 at point C, transverse load at point C, and when we load at point C by a unit load, the reaction in the members are, so you have got a unit load here, you have got a unit load at point B, you have got a L moment, because 1 into L, there will be a moment L developed at point B, and the reaction forces at the support. So these are the things that happen. And similarly, when you apply a unit moment at C, that is W4, this is case 4, you will have a moment here, you will have a moment, unit moment here, and the counteracting moment at point and the support. That is so with all these figures clear to you, hopefully, we will now calculate our PML and PSL. This is what is given. You see, PML is 1, 0, 0, 0. What is this column represents? Column represents case 1, and 1, 0, 0, 0. These 4 terms represents the direction, the values of the member forces. So in the second case, you have got the load, that is for the case 2, W2, and these are the member forces. 0, 1, 0, 0 are the member forces. Similarly, the third one is the unit load at C, that is case 3, and then these 1, L, 1, 0 are the member forces, because we have seen it from this figure. You see it here, 1, L, 1, 0. So rather this is 1, this is L, this is 1, and it does not have, mind it, we have assumed AB as element 1 and BC as element 2. So degree of freedom is, this is first degree and second degree of freedom at point B, third degree and fourth degree are at point C. So accordingly, you have to order the particular PML. Okay, so the rows represents the degrees of freedom and the column represents the load direction. So this PML is this matrix. Okay. Similarly, PSL again, your reactions are 2 in number at the support. One is the transverse reaction, and then the other one is the counteracting moment. So obviously these two forces, these 2 degrees of freedom at the support are represented by the 2 rows, and the 4 columns represents the direction of the forces, external forces, in which you have got the actual load applied. So this is very important. So these PML and PSL are calculated for this transversely loaded beam in question. The next is PMR and PSR, and we know that R represents the redundant forces. So basically, exactly whatever we have done for the external load, we will do it for the redundant forces. In fact, we have got 2 redundant forces. We have got 2 redundant forces, means the member forces that will get developed due to the redundant forces are 4 in number. That is all right, because the member degrees of freedom are 4. But the column numbers represents the force direction basically. So in this particular case, we have got only 2 forces, one at RB and the other one at RC. So obviously you have got RB, we have applied a unit load R1 equals to 1 here, and for that R1 equals to 1, the member forces are given by this. If I apply a R1 here, you get this force 1, 0, 0, 0. This is for the first one, and for the second one, this is R2 equals to 1. You get the second column. So these are the member forces, because this is obvious, because you have already used your W1 and W3. Whatever is there for W1 and W3, you can just repeat it here, because the direction of the external load and direction of the redundant forces are same. W1 and W3 is same as R1 and R2. You can just repeat it. You need not have to really calculate. See, this is for W1, this is for W3. It is identical, W1 and W3. Similarly, for the support, it is for W1 and W3. So this is for W1, you see here, and this is for W3, it is here. So PMR and PSR are calculated. So now you have got your flexibility matrix FM, you have got your PML, you have got your PSL, you have got your PMR, you have got your PSR. Every single component that is required to calculate our compatibility equation is available to us. Now we have to just formalize this whole expression. What is that? Step 5. In step 5, what we do, we calculate our FRL and FRR. These are the terminologies we have discussed. It is very similar to, not similar, it is exactly same what we have done in our class analysis. Hopefully you have gone through whatever has been taught. So this is the same thing that we will be doing here. So FRR and FRL are calculated, and this needs some longhand calculation. You have to do this calculation by hand, because I have not done it, because unnecessary, it will be a wastage of time. What I would suggest is you do it by yourself once in your home. Otherwise, in the exam, it will be difficult for you to complete the problem within the stipulated time, because you have to really do a matrix multiplication and taking track of a matrix means 3 matrix multiplication. So it's a long job basically, but you have to do it. People do it, so you will also be able to do it. That's not a big issue. Now you get your FRL matrix, and if you have got your FRR matrix, okay, so this is done. Now you will apply your compatibility equation. Compatibility equation is all known to you, and you know the displacement at B and C is already taken as 0 because we are not considering any settlement of support. If there is any settlement of support, you can always have these numbers written here in the proper unit. Mind it, in the proper unit. If all your lengths are taken in meter, your displacement also should be calculated or written in terms of meter. If some millimeter displacement is given, you have to convert it into meter and write it in this place. Suppose you have got a B support settled by some amount. So what will be the reaction? So these are very interesting things that you can always do. It becomes very simple. You see, it is much simpler than whatever analysis method you have used in your earlier lessons on theory of structures. So once you do it, the only challenge is this, to invert this FRR matrix. FRR is a 2 by 2 matrix. In this particular case, we have got a 2 by 2 matrix. So inverting a 2 by 2 matrix is just, you don't have to really do it. You can do it by on seeing itself. Visually, you can invert a 2 by 2 matrix. You really don't have to use calculator to invert it. So this 2 by 2 matrix is given. Mind it, flexibility matrix method works extremely well for static indeterminate problem having less number of static indeterminacy. Mind it, for less number of static indeterminacy. So if you have got 1 or 2 or even 3, at most 3 degrees of freedom as indeterminate system, it will be easy for you to do the analysis. Otherwise, it becomes little cumbersome because if the number of degrees of freedom, that static indeterminacy is large in number, you have to do a large inversion. For large inversion, you have to use calculator. Otherwise, you will not be able to do it. So once that inversion is done, you can easily calculate your reaction forces here. So R is given, so R is obtained here. So this, up to this point, is it clear? Hello? Hello? Is it clear? I am not able to listen to anybody. Okay, it's clear. Now, the next important part is to plot the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagram. This is a very important thing that we must have to do, basically. So this shear force diagram and bending moment diagram has to be plotted. See, once the reaction forces are obtained, you can do it by general method. You have got your R1, R2, you have got your external load given, and you can plot your shear force diagram and bending moment diagram. That is one way of doing it. You can do it, but we will try to learn an alternate way of plotting shear force diagram and bending moment diagram. This is what we will now study. So this is the 7th step of calculation. So what is done? We will calculate the member end action. Member end action means you have got your PML and PMR matrix already known. W and R are known. So PML into W gives the member force due to the external applied load. PMR into R gives us the member force due to the redundant force. Redundant force means the reaction force that is now calculated. Now your PM, that is the member end action. Member end action means you have got 4 degrees of freedom. So 4 degrees of freedom needs 4 member end action. That is what is the transverse force and what is the moment at the member boundary. That is what is done here. So these are the values that is calculated. So these are the values that is calculated. Fine. But now this PM is not. PM means member end action is not the final load basically. Okay. Now we have to really understand certain basic ideas. So what is happening, and let us be very clear about it. What is happening to the structure? We are calculating the member end action using this particular formula based on the fact that the entire beam is cantilever in nature. Whatever may be the direction of forces, whatever may be the compatibility condition, but generally we are understanding the analyzing the beam as a cantilever beam. In this particular context, we are considering this as a cantilever beam. Now, what we have to account for is the restraint forces, because basically at point B and point C, we are restraining the beam using certain factors actually. So we are restraining the beams at B and C. So these restraining forces, it is written here, the action is due to the unrestrained structure is what is PM. Now we need to know, now add the restraint forces member wise to the member end forces. So these restraint forces has to be added finally to the whatever member end action calculated for the cantilever beam. Now this restraint forces is a very important thing that you must keep in mind. The restraint forces are to be added in the reaction direction. Reaction direction is, now let us go back. Now you have a loop, just have a loop. What is the restraint forces written for the first degree? It is WL by 2, and you see there is no component of P by 2. So this restraint force is due to the first beam only. Now this is what we will see why it is a positive sign. You just have to go back. You see here, this is the B point where we have got the first restraint force, and this B point has got a reaction force directed in the upward direction, which is in the positive Y direction. So obviously the reaction force to be considered at B, that is the restraint force to be considered at B, is in the upward direction. Okay, and this particular point at point B, the restraint force that has to be calculated is based on the load which is to the left of B, So for the left of B, you have got only this UDL W per meter, which is 5 kilonewton per meter. So whatever the reaction, the fixed end reaction that we have calculated due to this W per meter will be added here as the reaction force. Okay, so this is what is done. So this explains why this is only WL by 2 with a positive sign. WL by 2 with a positive sign. And similarly, you have got the moment, the restraining moment, which is having a negative sign here because your reaction, for the load it was having a positive sign. So reaction will have a negative sign. So it will have a minus WL by L square by 12. This is also due to the forces from the left hand side at point B. And the next two component is at point C. Again, it is only for the left hand component of point C, which is P by 2 and PL by 8. Now you add these fixed and restraint forces with the actual member end action calculated based on applied load and the reaction force. You have your final forces. So these are the final forces you find out here. Now you will be able to appreciate this point why these restraint forces plays an important part. Because you see here your member end action, what you have obtained here, member end action point C. Suppose we take the rotation at point C, that is the moment at point C. If I take only the member end action, it is PL by 8. Your point C is a roller support. Technically, it should not have any moment developed at the roller support or pin support. But you are getting a PL by 8 moment here. So it is not correct. So it has to be corrected using these restraint forces. Now you have got a minus PL by 8 here. And finally, you see your bending moment at C is coming to be 0. You see, now your concept is satisfied, whatever you have learned, that at the pin support it should have a zero moment, and this is now coming to be correct at point C. Now these first two terms give you the shear force and the bending moment at the right of B. As I have told you, we are only considering for the point B, we are only considering the left hand side forces. So obviously the final forces that is coming here is at the immediate right hand of B, okay, or the immediate right hand at B is not the correct thing. It is the immediate right of element 1 or immediate left of point B is the forces here, shear force and bending moment. And again, for immediate right at element 2, that means at point C, left of point C, you have got your shear force and bending moment. So this is your member end action. Now we need to calculate your entire structure to calculate our shear force and bending moment diagram. So we have got only at B and C. Now we have to calculate at A what are the forces that is developed. So for the support reaction, it is PS is the support reaction. Again, it is PSL into W plus PSR into R. So you have got these values 94 WL by 44 minus 9P, whatever it is called from the unrestrained structure. Again, this support reaction also has to be supplemented by the fixed end effect, that is the what you call the restrained effect that is coming, and then for the restrained effect at point A, the restrained effect is again due to the W load UDL that is applied, which is having a restraint force directed in the upward direction of positive, and your moment is also positive because it is counteracting the forces there. So this is WL square by 12. So now you add this PS with PSF, you add them up, you get the final values of the forces and your moment at the boundaries. Now you get PA, MA, PB, MB, PC and MC. These are the forces and moments that you calculate or obtain from your earlier calculation. And then you put your values of W and L, and you know that we have used P equals to W into L, and then these are the values of shear force and moment developed at point A and point B and point C. At all the 3 points, these are the values. Now, this is very important to understand these signs here. Here you have used the, you see here, your PA has come positive, MA has come positive, PB has come positive, MB has come negative, and so on and so forth. So you just have it here. Now, when I plot it, you have to keep track of this signage that we are obtaining here. So now you go to the plotting of the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagram. Now you see what is done here. You have got a positive 7.72 as your reaction force at A. That is shear force at A is coming as 7.72 with a positive sign. Now what is a positive sign? Positive sign at A represents that the reaction at point A or the shear force at point A is directed in the upward direction. Am I correct? Am I clear? This is a positive sign. Positive signs means it is directed in the upward direction because this is what exactly we have used as your sign convention. I should have written the sign convention in every other page actually. Now this is the positive sense of your y-axis. So 7.72 is coming positive. Positive means this is directed upwards. 7.72 is directed upwards. Now you have to understand a basic concept. I don't know whether anybody, any teacher earlier have given you this concept of no or not, but I am trying to make you understand how you have to plot your shear force diagram and bending moment diagram when you have got a defined axis system here. Now you see, at this point A, at this point A, what is the outward normal direction at point A? It is in the negative x direction at point A. Outward normal at point A is in the negative x direction. Am I correct? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So negative x direction. Now the concept is any shear force, any transverse force rather, if it is negative, that if it is directed in the negative direction on a plane with a negative normal, then it will be considered as positive shear. And if it is positive on positive, it is considered as positive shear. But if a shear force is directed in the positive y direction, while the normal is in the negative x direction, it will be considered as negative shear. So this is a very important concept. Negative on negative is a positive, positive on positive is a positive, negative on positive is a negative, positive on negative is a negative. So this concept has to be made very, very clear while plotting your shear force and bending moment diagram. So this is what we are doing. So obviously your 7.72 is a negative value because we are having a positive shear on a section with a negative x-axis. So 7.72 is taken as minus. And you see here at PC is the shear force at the other end, that is at C. It is positive. Positive because your C is positive, the value of the shear force is positive, and the normal at C is also in the positive x direction. So obviously this is a positive sense of shear here. 6.82 is positive. Now the rest of the thing is simply plotting the shear forces following the thing. Now here you see it will be very clear where it is. Here you see your PB, PB means your total reaction at B. Mind it, your total reaction at B is how much? 25.45. What is that total reaction at B? Total reaction at B is the shear on the left hand side of B and shear on the right hand side of B combined together, and then that is 25.45. And you see here this is 12.27, this is 13.78, and it will something coming around that value only, but it will be little bit plus minus because we are doing lot of approximation, but tentatively it is around 26, so it is coming correctly only. Now you have got a UDL, so it will be a straight line, your shear force diagram. So this is positive and this is negative, and this is your shear force diagram. Mind it, you have to plot it very, very carefully, the shear force diagram, because once you have calculated all the intermediate values, your final marks, if a 25 mark is assigned to a particular problem, the final 5 marks will be assigned if you are plotting your shear force diagram and bending moment diagram in the proper sense. Because right in the beginning, when you are starting the problem with your figure of the problem, you have to really define your axis system. Without any axis system drawn in the problem, I will be deducting 25% of your marks. So initially the 25% marks will be gone, and then you draw some shear force diagram, it does not matter, but we don't have a reference axis system. So again, I deduct another 25% marks for your 5 marks. So you will be losing a significant amount of marks if you are not following all the steps as I have given in this particular problem. That is why I have written the problem step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3, every single aspect has to be done properly when you are presenting the problem in your examination paper. So it needs practice. Now, coming to the bending moment diagram. So bending moment diagram is, you start here, your starting point is here, MA. MA is 3.64. It is a positive sense of moment applied here. Positive sense of moment applied here means it is an anti-clockwise moment applied here. Anti-clockwise is fine here, no problem. I don't have any problem with this particular issue. The problem is that we have to always plot the bending moment diagram on the tension side. This is a very, very important thing. So this, I think, the earlier teachers in structural mechanics have already made you understand that the bending moment diagram has to be plotted in the tension side. So you don't have to bother which is positive, which is negative. That is the immaterial thing. Bending moment positive, bending moment negative, hugging moment, sagging moment. These are all means nonsensical concept basically. As long as you are drawing your bending moment in your tension side, it will be very clear what is the value of moment there and what is the tension side and what is the compression side. Now, when we are plotting a 3 points, when you are applying a moment 3.64 at this left end A, obviously your top fiber will be in tension and the bottom fiber will be in the compression. So you are just plotting your bending moment in the positive side. Positive side means in the tension side. This is what is very important thing. And then you come here, your moment at B, this is the fourth value. Moment at B is 12.72. This is negative. So you can get an idea. This is negative means this is at this B point it is uh, at B point it is negative. Negative means it is in the clockwise direction. Clockwise direction means it is rotating in this direction. So it is rotating in this direction means again at point B the tension side is in the upward direction. So this is 12.72, and then I have drawn it using dotted line because plotting this curved surface using a firm line will make the line look odd. So I have drawn it with a dotted line, but you can always draw it using a firm line. And then these are all straight lines, so it can be easily drawn using straight lines. And when you have got a reaction force here, you can always calculate the moment here 13.64 at the center. So this is not obtained from your uh, table here. So it's the intermediate values of the bending moment and shear force and the point where the bending moment becomes zero. All these things you have to do it by hand in a separate calculation. This cannot be obtained from your uh, development of this process. So you can only have your bending moment and shear forces calculated at the boundaries and then get it calculated. You can have the numbers here and plot it accordingly. And if you are asked to find out the location of the beam at which the bending moment is zero or shear force is zero, so you have to use your simple geometric concept and then you can have your values calculated. Is it clear? This problem, this entire problem, because the entire problem ends here, this particular beam problem ends here, it will give us the whole concept how to solve a transversely loaded system. So there can be various different what I call variation for this particular problem. So let us have some understanding. So it may be so that this is 2 EI, this is EI, we may change it to EI, it may be 2 EI. There may be a case where this W load will not be there, only P load will be there. So accordingly the things will change, the problem will change. So there are a lot of options that, and even what we can do, we can remove this point B. We can remove this point B altogether. We will have a point C only, but this ACB without B in between, there is no pin support at point B. Suppose there is a, let me draw just a minute. I close it and I open it in paint brush. Just a minute. Huh? Now is it visible? Is it visible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
বলো দেখা যাচ্ছে তো? Now
Yes,
what
sir.
I wanted to
Yes,
say,
sir.
what I wanted to say, just I am defining a problem here, just a minute. Suppose I have got a beam. Suppose this is a beam. Suppose this is a beam. Okay. Now for this beam, what I do, this is fixed end. This is pinned end. So this is fixed end, this is pinned end. What I do here, I use this 2EI is up to this point, say. Up to this point, the rigidity is 2EI, and here it is 3EI. So at this point, there is no support. It is a continuous beam, but part of the beam is having 2EI, part of the beam is having 3EI, and you have got a system of load here. Suppose there is a point load here. Simple, I am talking about two cases. And a point load here. Now, how will you analyze this particular beam? How will you analyze this particular beam? Anybody has got any idea how you go ahead with it? Because this is 2EI and 3EI separate. How will you go ahead with this particular problem? Can anybody give some idea? Have I made myself clear? The problem.
স্যার আমরা ওখানে একটা মানে ডামি একটা সাপোর্ট অ্যাজিউম করতে পারি
কেন না 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 কেন সাপোর্ট অ্যাজিউম করবে why can there is no support, so how can you assume a dummy support over there? Dummy support মানে তোমাকে একটা redundant force apply করতে হবে। না না না, that is not the correct way of looking into the problem. Any idea from anybody else? Any idea from anybody else? কেউ বলতে পারবে আর? আচ্ছা আমি বলে দিচ্ছি। What you have to do, you have to consider this part, just a minute. You have to consider this part as element number 1, this part as element number 2, fine. And then that means here you have got 2 degrees of freedom, here you have got 2 degrees of freedom, because as we have already discussed that each element boundary will have 2 degrees of freedom. So here we have got 2 degrees of freedom, here we have got 2 degrees of freedom. So your primary structure will have 2 elements. Your primary structure will have 2 elements with 4 degrees of freedom, all right. And then for that, all the necessary load calculation, your flexibility matrix calculation, everything has to be done. And even your PML calculation have to be done using this element as 1 as element as 2. Whereas when calculating your PMR matrix, you have to consider only, so this is your primary structure. Your secondary structure will have only one redundant force. So there will be only one redundant force. for this particular redundant force, you have to calculate your member force 1 and member force 2 here, and the member force 3 and member force 4 here. So your PMR matrix will be 1 column, 4 rows. So there will be 4, that is a 4 by 1 matrix or a vector basically. Okay. Whereas your PML will be a 4 by 4. So this is what has to be done. And as we are having our rigidity 2EI and 3EI, so in your F matrix, what is your flexibility matrix, which is okay, it is not there. In your flexibility matrix, you have got your 4 by 4 F matrix, that's all right. So once you do that, you will end up with a single value of FRR. FRR will be a single value because you are considering only one redundant reaction force. So that will make your FRR to be 1. And then it will be a simple solution the way you are doing it. So these are many variations that we can formulate while solving a problem for beam using flexibility matrix method. You can have, if you have got 3 different values of rigidity along the length of the beam, although you have got a single reaction at the free end, still you can have your here like that. What I mean to say, your elements divided into individual component where EI is varying. So for a varying EI, so this particular matrix method, flexibility matrix method, is a very convenient way of solving the problem. Is it clear? Have I made myself clear to all of you? If I give problems, will it be possible for you to solve this kind of problem? বুঝতে পারলে সবাই কি বললাম?
Yes, sir.
Acha. So this is the first problem that we have discussed. Now let me take the second problem. Let me take up the second problem, and I will just, it will be a little bit quickly, I will go through it little quickly, but nevertheless I will try to explain every aspect. That's a different issue. But as we have discussed in very much detail about the first problem, the second problem will be very similar problem, but it is a for frame structure. So a little bit of change here and there will be there, but I hope you will be able to follow it. The reason being is that the understanding is now very clear to you. Acha. For that, what I do, I share it. All right. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now look into this problem. This problem is analysis of a plane frame using flexibility matrix approach. So this is a plane frame structure. Earlier we have discussed about an transversely loaded system. Now when we are talking about plane frame system, you have got horizontal member, vertical member, even inclined member also is there as a part of frame. So naturally, the difference between a normal beam and a frame is that the frame structure has the capability of taking axial load. So naturally, your axial stiffness has to be included in your calculation of your frame structure. So naturally, your flexibility matrix, which was 2 by 2 in nature, now it will be a 3 by 3 matrix, because the 3 degrees of freedom are the axial degree of freedom, the transverse degree of freedom, and the rotational degree of freedom, and we have developed the generalized flexibility matrix for a 3 by 3 degree of freedom already in our earlier classes. So naturally, we will now consider that axial stiffness into effect. Now the dimensions are given: L, E, cross-sectional area, load, everything is given. Your sign convention is also very clearly given. You see, this is your positive x-axis, positive y-axis, and the positive sense of your rotation. Everything is given. And here your value of EI is EI. This is 3 EI. The cross-sectional area is A. Here the cross-sectional area is 2A. So these are certain changes that we have understood here. Now you have to calculate your equivalent joint load. Like your earlier problem, we also have to calculate our equivalent joint load. Now the only load that is there is, this is element number 1, this is element number 2, this is the boundary between element number 1 and 2. And then you have got this particular, what is there, that this is a fixed end here, fixed end here. What we will do, we will remove this particular fixity, this 3 degrees of freedom we will remove. So this is a problem with 3 degrees of indeterminacy. So we will calculate our joint load. Joint load is only for the element 2, because element 1 does not have any load. So only element 2 has got a load. So the joint loads are calculated in this fashion, you see. Minus WL by 2 minus WL square. The same sign convention we have used in our earlier problem is maintained here. And our redundant forces, this is for the primary structure, and for the redundant forces, that is for the secondary structure, we have considered axial force as R1, that is the first redundant force, transverse force as R2, second redundant force, and the rotating force, the rotation at C as the third redundant force. And all these redundant force are taken in the positive axis sense. Okay. Now coming to the flexibility matrix, we are writing directly the global flexibility matrix, because this first component is for the first element, the second component is for the second element, and using the concept, because your area, cross-sectional area and EI values being different, you have got different values of 2EI and all those things. So this is very simple. In line to the earlier problem, we have developed our global flexibility matrix also, and your off-diagonal terms are all 0. So this is a 6 by 6 matrix. This is clear. Now we are considering your member axis. So this is very important. Now we are considering our member axis. We have always considered that the member, the axis along the member direction is considered as positive. So for the element 1, your x1 is directed upwards. So this is positive. So now what is done here, you see y1 is taken, because we are considering right hand screw rule. So from x1 to y1 it will be going towards the right. So y1 locally it is taken as positive here. This is local axis system. And for x2 and y2, the concept remains same, because your x2 is in the positive x, y2 in the positive y. So these are the member axis system. So member axis system is given here. So naturally now we have to consider our member force directions basically. Member force direction, just a minute. Now this particular end, that is the bottom end, is the support. Bottom end is the support. So this is your first node point. This is your second node point. Each node point has got 3 degrees of freedom. So you have got member forces as 6. 3 into 2. 2 nodes, 3 degrees of freedom. Member forces 6. Now we have considered your member axis as x1 and y1 for the first element. So naturally for the first element here, you have got your PML1. This is your axial load. The first member force 1. The second member force PML2, because this is in the local member axis, this is your positive sense.
local member axis, and whatever may be the member axis, we are always considering anti-clockwise to be the positive moment. So this is your PML3. So these are the member forces PML1, PML2 and PML3. Similarly, for the second node, it is PML4, PML5 and PML6. So these are the member forces basically. Now we are considering, so now you see we have got 4 external load degrees of freedom, 4 external load degrees of freedom. So obviously when we want to calculate your PML matrix, you will have 4 number of columns, each representing each external force direction. So that means we have to consider 4 cases to calculate our PML. You see here. The first case is W1 equals to 1. Second case is W2 equals to 1. Third case is W3 equals to 1. The fourth case is W4 equals to 1, because these are only the 4 load cases that is available, because these are the 4 directions of load that is available in this particular problem. Now for that, when we are considering W1 equals to 1, the only member force that gets developed is PML, just a minute, PML1. The only member force that gets developed is PML1, and the only reaction force that is developed is PSL1. So the only member force that gets developed is PML1 and reaction force is PSL1 with the proper signage. Similarly, for the second load, external load 1, you have got only one particular direction of member force, that is PML2, PML3. I think it is PML3. Yes, it is PML3. For W2, the only member force that gets developed is PML3, and the only reaction force is developed is PSL3. Correct? Yes, PSL3 is developed. With the proper sign, we can have the values written. Now for W3 equals to 1, that is the third loading point, you have got all the other forces the way we have done it for the earlier case. So the member force will be PML1 and PML3, as well as PML, what? This one is PML5. So PML1, PML3 and PML5, these are the 3 member forces that gets developed due to W3. And similarly for W4, you have got all the member forces and your reaction forces developed. So naturally, you will now calculate your PML matrix. PML matrix is calculated, PSL matrix is calculated, PML matrix and PSL matrix is calculated. In the similar line, you can have your reaction for the reaction forces R1, R2 and R3 equated to 0. You can have your member forces calculated. So this is very, very important. You have to do it, calculation of PMR and PSR. So this follows the same technique, the way we have done it in the earlier problem, and the way we have done the PML calculation for this particular case. For this R1, R2, R3, we can calculate our member forces. So that is done here. PMR and PSR is calculated. So naturally, FM is known, PML is known, PMR is known, everything is known. So obviously, your FRL matrix is known. FRL matrix is calculated. FRR matrix is calculated. Every single matrices can be calculated based on the basic calculations. Now, putting your values of L, E, and I, that is what we have already used or defined in the earlier case. In this particular case, you can calculate your reaction force. Now, this is a 3x3 matrix. Mind it, it has to be done meticulously. Unlike a 2x2 matrix, this has to be done. So FRR is calculated, FRR inverse is calculated, and you get your R1, R2, R3. These are the reaction forces calculated. So this is known. Next is calculation of the member end action acting, similar way, PML into W plus PMR into R. And then you have to calculate the what you call the restraint forces. This restraint force is very important in this case. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, these are the 6 values here. So 6 values here. So obviously, in the member 1, if you try to remember, in your member 1, you don't have any external force. So for the member 1, that means that joint B, there won't be any restraint force. The only member which has got a external force is member C, member 2. That means your restraint force will be only at point C. At point C, the degrees of freedom are 5 and 6, because rather not 5 and 6, yes, 5 and 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because your reactions there, the external loading is only in the transverse direction and in the rotational direction. So you have got only these two, this one and this one. Okay, these are the two values that you get. So your PM, member actual force is added here, and you get your total value of your PM. Similarly, for support reaction, you do the same exercise, PSL into W plus PSR into W, but here you see you don't have any restraint force. The restraint force is not required because your member 1 does not have any external load. That is why there is no concept of restraint force to be added or subtracted from the support reaction that we have obtained using this equation, PSLW plus PSRR. So that is why it is not needed. Now, all these values with proper signage, the way we have done for the earlier case, if we plot it, we will get our shear force diagram and bending moment diagram calculated in this way. And in this particular case, because we have got an axial component of load also, so this axial component of load here as well as here, so this axial component of load has to be explicitly written in the problem. The reason is that you can have your shear force and bending moment diagram drawn this way, but axial force diagram cannot be drawn, so you have to explicitly mention the values of what you call the axial force that is getting developed here. Okay, so this is the entire problem. It follows exactly the same procedure that we have done in our earlier case. Only thing is that here the degrees of freedom are more, so keeping a track of the problem is little tricky. That is the only issue. So what I will do, I will immediately share, now itself I am going to share this particular problem, this PDF file with you, with this particular group, WhatsApp group. You go through the problem. I hope you have already understood the first problem, and I told you that you should and you must solve it by yourself. I have only shown it to you. It is not necessarily that you are writing it while I am showing it. So you have to solve it by yourself. You have to satisfy yourself in every sense that you are capable of solving the problem. Then I am going to share this particular PDF file also with you, this PDF file containing the problem for this frame structure. And you also should calculate all the values, because there are lot of step jump, because if I want to show every single step, the solving of the problem itself will take 40 to 45 minutes. So these are all big problems. So and making you explain means it will take a long time. So the best possible thing in the university education should be, I have shown it to you, I have explained every steps to you. Now it is at your end, you should practice for yourself and make yourself understand that things, whatever you have understood, is okay. For your practice problem sake, for how to practice the problems, you have gone through various indeterminate structure analysis in your earlier courses. you pick up any indeterminate beam, indeterminate frame with less number of indeterminacy. Don't take a problem with a large number of indeterminacy. 1 or 2, at most 3 degrees of indeterminacy you take. Solve it using your flexibility matrix method understanding. Compare the result with the other methods that you have learned using, say, what are the methods you have learned? Moment distribution method, slope deflection method. You compare. Suppose, hopefully, you have got a few moment distribution problem or slope deflection problem already in your exercise book from your earlier classes. Take that problem, solve it using flexibility method, compare the bending moment and shear force diagram, what you have obtained using your earlier model with your flexibility model. If they compare well, then you have understood the problem, and if they don't compare, then you have to re-look into the understanding of your flexibility coefficient method. Okay, so have I made myself clear to every one of you? হ্যালো হ্যালো, প্রত্যেকে বুঝতে পেরেছো আমি কি বলতে চাইছি?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
বলতে চাইছি। Okay. So I am going to share this PDF file now itself, and I am not going to call the roll because immediately I have to leave for the university. So I don't have time for now. On Wednesday at 12 o'clock we have got a class. Am I correct? Okay. So on that day we are finally going to commence our study on structural dynamics. Okay. So the flexibility matrix method is over. In the next class, that is 30th is a Monday, and then next Monday after 2 weeks we will have another class, and we will start the analysis using stiffness matrix method. Okay, so you have to now really get into the flexibility matrix method very carefully, meticulously, with various example problems from wherever you get. There are hundreds of problems you can try from your earlier understanding. Just you have to apply your sense, you have to do some matrix calculation, and that's all. Okay, thank you very much. So I am winding up, and I will just share this file right now itself. Once you get it, I will be able to see that you have got it. Okay, thank you.